Hi there, my name is Ariel Halevi, and for those of you who don't know me, I've been spending the last 25 years um, advocating for Israel professionally and then also training other people how to do it. I've trained over tens of thousands of people, Jewish communities around the world, students, government officials, and so on and so forth. And the purpose of this video is to share with you some tips and recommendations that are specifically tailored for what we expect is going to be a tsunami of anti-Israel sentiment and a rise in anti-Semitism, even beyond what we've seen over the past 2 years. Because with the ending of the war and Hamas taking over Gaza again, we can expect a lot of new video footage. And that is going to likely trigger a massive global response online, media outlets, and maybe even offline around you. And so the purpose of this video is kind of to be an emergency resource for you that you can use to really get yourself through these next few weeks and protect your own well-being and maintain your resilience while still being effective for Israel. But I would say that this video is not so much about how well you can support Israel. This video is how you can support yourself, your family, and your community. And if I'm going to try to move through it quickly, it's meant to be a short video, but if there's any additional resources you feel you need, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we will share more and more content with you. So I'm going to talk to you about several points and I'm going to move through them fairly quickly. Number one, emotional self-protection. We'll talk about protecting children and family. We'll talk about building our personal resilience, um, smart engagement with online hate, community strategies. Remember, you're not going this alone. Mindset shifts, very, very important. If you must respond, how to use the 3P method. And finally, remembering our collective strength. And some of these points may be adjacent to one another, but each one of them has its own recommendations. And I want to say up front, don't feel at the end of this video that you have to apply all of them. I've been doing this for many, many years, and I still can't apply all of them. And the fact of the matter is that we're human and that we are controlled by circumstance and emotion and hormones. It's very, very difficult to really manage and steer the human operating system. So if you can take one or two or three of the several dozen tips that I'm going to give you in this video, that's great. And when you fail, don't, you know, bash yourself. Just get up and try again. So let's talk about emotional self-protection. This is very, very important. So the way the human mind works, um, a lot of times it is not strong enough to avoid its own response to external stimulations. The analogy I can give you is imagine driving your car 60, 70 miles an hour, holding the wheel without a seatbelt and saying, I'll just stay focused. And if we crash, I'll just hold on. You can't. If you don't have an airbag and if you don't have a seatbelt, you will get hurt. And sometimes what we have to do is we have to put on those seat belts or maybe just not even get into the car. So limit your daily exposure. Maybe for the next 2 weeks, decide what are some of the times of day that you do want to engage, and then give yourself 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. If you're going to start going online, put a clock that counts down and reminds you, okay, it's been 30 minutes, stop. Believe me, the world will go on just well without you. Um, Try to avoid exposure, specifically during high stress times of the day. So if the previous bullet is about when you should engage, the second bullet is about when you shouldn't. Don't do it when you wake up. Definitely don't do it before you go to sleep, and don't do it at work, start of day or before important meetings that you have. We are not strong enough to avoid the emotional responses that get triggered. And so sometimes we just have to avoid the exposure to begin with. The third point is also about controlling the exposure. Curate your feeds. Unfollow feeds that trigger you. Mute certain notifications on your phone and certain platforms. That will help you rejuvenate. It will help you avoid getting sucked into the quicksand known as death scrolling. Um, Try to start looking for patterns in content that triggers you, right? Try to notice when you're online or when people speak around you, are there certain situations that you feel that stress in your chest, that you have a physical response? You don't need to be a doctor or professional to notice this. You just have to try and be aware. The minute I just told you to look for it, I'm already priming your brain to notice. Just try to remind yourself, oh, that triggered me, that triggered me. Okay, and then stay away from those triggers. And if you can't stay away from the trigger, if you have been triggered, and it's difficult because that's why it's called a trigger, but see if you can breathe or walk around or listen to music. Pick the end of this video, think about an album or two or three songs that always kind of relax you or put you in a good mood. Have them on your phone ready. And when you get triggered, just take a moment, listen for 3 minutes to a song and relax. Now, when we talk about breathing, one of the most effective ways to calm yourself down is called box breathing. It's when you breathe in and out in cycles of 4 seconds. So it would be 4 seconds in, hold it for 4 seconds, release for 4 seconds, and then hold it again for 4 seconds. Now, if you do that 4 times, that's called the 4x4 method. It literally reboots your nervous operating system. So it looks something like this. In, hold, release, hold. If you do that 4 times, and that takes maybe a minute, less, you're really resetting your nervous system. And this is great, not just for what we're talking about. This is great before or after a really important meeting that you have at work, or if you get into a really serious argument with a family member, especially your kids. Um, Give yourself permission not to engage. Not every post requires a response. Not every lie requires you fixing it. There are others who can take your place if you feel overwhelmed. And it's important that you take care of yourself so that you can respond when you do need to respond. Silence is not weakness. It is strategic emotional conservation. It's very, very important. Our emotions, they're like resources. We have to manage those resources wisely. And yes, practice walking away, practice seeing something and not responding to it. Your mental health is much more important than winning an argument. And guess what? You probably won't win the argument because arguments are not won through one or two exchanges, just not how it works. So that's emotional self-preservation or protection. Let's talk about your kids and your family. Make sure to avoid viewing disturbing content when your kids are around you. They absorb everything. And even if you think that you're using earplugs and nobody can hear you, AirPods, they can see your bodily response. They can sense the change in your mental state, in your emotional state. They'll feel it, even as you're, making food in the kitchen. So when your kids are around, don't be online. Or if you are online, don't look at this content. Use that time to be with them. Talk to them. Even if you want to talk about the conflict, better that you engage with them than with online hate content that then affects you and spills over to them. If your kid was exposed, either through watching you watch something or they were on their phone as well, don't wait for them to come and talk to you about it. You need to talk about it in a way that takes into consideration their age and their specific personality, and you know them better than anybody. But try to ask them, have you seen anything that troubled you lately? What, did anything happen at school? And then get them to open up. They may not do it right away, but your consistency will ultimately lead them to open up to you. And that's very, very important because they need help processing. Kids don't know how to process as much as adults do, and actually many adults don't know either. Um, like I said in my first bullet, they see you, they absorb. So whatever you do that's positive, they'll learn how to do as well. That's why modeling is so important between adults and kids. If they see you emotionally regulating yourself, they're learning how to do it themselves. Putting aside the whole situation over the next few weeks, that's a generally good recommendation for giving your kids the tools they need to be more mentally and emotionally resilient. Let's talk about how you can maintain your own personal resilience. Um, don't go it alone. There's something very solitary about being in front of your phone and scrolling and responding. It makes you forget that you're part of a community, that you have friends, that you have family. Maybe you belong to a synagogue. Remember that and reach out. Maybe put together a WhatsApp group. Or if there's already a community group, get involved. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But make sure that for every minute you're spending online or offline, engaging with people who are critiquing or criticizing or accusing Israel of things, try to see if you can create a one-to-one ratio. For every minute you speak to those people, find ways of spending a minute talking to people who share your values. This isn't to say that we can't have conversations that criticize Israel. We absolutely can. I'm talking about dealing with the aggressive anti-Israel narrative that is not about criticizing Israel for the purpose of making it a better country or for the purpose of upholding our shared values. I'm talking about the narratives that are being driven for the purpose of destroying and weakening Israel. So when you have that in front of you, try to then connect with people who you know love Israel and love being Jewish. And with them, certainly you can have conversations where you say you disagree or they say they disagree. But that kind of dialogue does not undermine the emotional resilience as much as the kind of anti-Semitic, anti-Zionistic rhetoric that's being fueled out there. Prioritize self-care. And you may notice that I'm repeating some of the points from one segment to another because I want them to be threaded throughout the entire video. Sleep is critical. Nutrition is critical. Moving around, doing exercise that releases stress from your body. I know that these are kind of universal recommendations, but they are excessively important now in the coming weeks because of what we expect in the rise in anti-Israel and anti-Semitic rhetoric and action around the world. Um, if praying helps you, pray. If it's meditation, do guided meditation. There's a lot of stuff you can find on YouTube that's free. Mindfulness exercises, breathing, like I said before. And just like I said that for 1 minute of this, spend a minute of this, make sure that you proactively find ways to curate joyful activities into your day. Let's say that you're now scrolling and you just spent 30 minutes battling people online and defending Israel. Go to YouTube, find your favorite stand-up artist and find a way to get yourself to laugh. Laughter releases hormones just as much as anger or fear or stress or helplessness do. And so if you can find ways to get yourself to smile and to enjoy and to, have times of your day that are filling you up, that'll be the fuel you can then use for the other activities that usually drain us. Try to focus on meaningful actions. Um, One of the biggest emotions that drains resilience and that burns us out is the feeling of helplessness. Just think about the last time you received really horrible customer service and they were like, sorry, we can't help you. And it was so unfair and nobody cared, right? How did you feel in that moment? You wanted to yell, you wanted to go online and write a review against them. It's not so much the damage they caused you by not renewing your subscription or not refunding $10 or $100 or $1,000. It's the feeling of being helpless against injustice. And so there are ways of countering that helplessness by giving yourself a sense of efficacy and agency. For example, finding opportunities to volunteer. Um, if it helps you, if you can, donate. Engage in organized pro-Israel or Jewish-related initiatives. Mobilize others from within your circle to do things with you. Maybe say to somebody, hey, I'm going to spend, this is my half hour a day that I allow myself to go online and speak up for Israel. Why don't we do it together? This is very, very important and helpful because the minute you feel agency, boom, you can stand straight again. Let's talk about smart engagement, specifically with hate online. And again, I want to emphasize, not every criticism of Israel is hate. Not everything somebody has to say against Israel is anti-Semitic. There's a lot of complexity in the current situation, and it is absolutely expected and legitimate that people will have opinions about we shouldn't have done that, we shouldn't have done that. I don't like this government. I do like this government. That's fine. But when we're dealing with pure hate, there are specific things you want to know. For example, when you should and when you should not engage. So here are 3 recommendations when you should engage. If you sense that the other person is genuinely curious and open-minded, even if they're saying things that are very upsetting to you. If you feel that you have a real emotional availability at the moment, if you just came out of a really bad meeting, if you just fought with your spouse, not a good time to have these conversations. If you didn't sleep well at night or you're hungry, don't have these conversations. We'll talk about that in a minute. Um, and when you feel you can respond with patience and respectfully without fueling the fire. When shouldn't you engage? When the person posting is anonymous, avoid it. We don't want people who are hiding behind anonymity. Usually there's a reason they're doing that. Or if you feel that what they're doing is violent or hateful, walk away. Sometimes engaging with them only gives them more reach because of how the algorithms work on social media. Um, if the thread already has 200 comments, if it's like a dog pile, ignore it. Other people will take care of it. And like I said before, when you're emotionally charged, it's very, very important at the level of emotional intelligence to really be aware of when you should not be speaking. And I know you have that voice in your head that says this is not a good time. Over the next few weeks, you really want to spend extra attention listening to that voice. Um, don't debate on their terms, right? Don't get dragged into provocative and extreme framing of the context. We have a tendency to mirror people around us. In sociology, that's called reciprocity. Somebody smiles to you, you smile back. Somebody raises their voices, you raise your voice. There's a lot behind that. And so if you expose yourself to people who are provocative, you're more likely to be provocative. And you don't want to do that. That's not effective and it's going to drain you afterwards. Try to reframe the conversations to things that have to do with humanity, facts, values. When I say facts, I don't mean getting into a factual debate. When was Israel here? We have an historical. No. But I am talking about um, zooming out and asking bigger questions. Don't get sucked into specific. Well, what about what happened yesterday at 5 when they did this? Those conversations are not effective. The better conversations are one that talk about core values. Where do we think this is going? What's a good resolution to this? How would you approach it? And just like I've demonstrated now, the best conversations are ones where you lead with questions, not necessarily with answers or attacks. And they're open-ended questions. They're not, don't you agree that? That's leading the witness. That's a yes or no answer. That's a closed question. You want to ask open questions. How do you feel about that? Um, where did you learn about this? Where do you get your sources? I'm not going to get into that too much, but there are a lot of recordings of me teaching this stuff. And if you want, we'll be happy to share it with you. Be the symbol. Be the change and the dialogue you would like to see in the world, right? Your tone. If you're able to remain calm, if you can speak with dignity, you will be more persuasive. It's not going to be what you say, it's going to be how you say it that's going to influence most people, especially the moderate majority that is also usually silent and therefore doesn't get counted in these conversations. You're responding to the person yelling, but there could be 300 people reading your exchange who are more moderate, more relaxed. They're going to be comparing you knowingly or unknowingly to the other person, and they're going to feel that they relate to more likely the people who are calm and keep the conversation intelligent and respectful. Let's talk about community strategies. Find, and if you can't, maybe create, and again, that gives agency, and creating something helps overcome helplessness. Safe spaces. They can be digital safe spaces, they can be in-person safe spaces, WhatsApp groups, community chats, community centers, online spaces where people can share feelings without judgment. Um, In-person meetings, social gatherings are so powerful for building resilience, and we're good at that, Jewish communities. So Shabbat dinners, community meetings, resilience circles, invite people to your house, um, 5, 10 people, and say, I just want to spend 3 hours sharing our frustration and getting support from one another. That reminds you that you're not alone. It reminds you that there are a lot of people in the world who support you, who love you, regardless of all the voices you're hearing outside. Um, Rotate. If you were ever part of a situation where you had to care for somebody in your family who was critically ill. And I know because I lost my father to ALS, and 2.5 years of morning, middle of the day, night shifts of taking care of him. And if my family and I were not really good at rotating, we would have all burned out. You have to care for the caregiver. And in this case, you're the caregiver for Israel and for your community. And just like I said before, that you have to sometimes avoid certain posts and give yourself a break, the same thing goes here. Rotate. Maybe find 4 people, 5 people, and coordinate the hours of the day that you're all going to respond so that you feel that you get more coverage. And when you're not responding, you know that there's a group of people who are doing it and it's part of teamwork. Really, really very important. I know it might sound weird when I'm going to call a few of my friends and try to coordinate with them who goes online when. Yes, as funny as it may sound, that will help you maintain your own resilience and it will help you be more effective. And you'll be hunting in packs, which in general has more impact online. Let's talk about the mindset. Like I said, there's a world out there, and then there's the way you see the world in here. And perception is 90% of reality, and that's what affects our inner state of mind. So remember the silent majority. That's what I talked to you about before. When you see, like I said before, a post that's like a dog pile, and you see 50, 60, 70, 100 people supporting what somebody said against Israel, your brain will inadvertently conclude that everybody's against us. That actually has a name. It's a bias. It's called the availability heuristic. And it's an illusion, right? Most of the world isn't against us, even though it may seem that way. There is a lot of data showing that while a lot of people might be critical of Israel, the vast majority of people around the world actually respect Israel, think Israel's right in this conflict. Doesn't mean they don't care for the Palestinians, but they're not those voices that you're hearing that are spewing hate. Remember that. The loudest voices online are often the most extreme. If it bleeds, it leads. That's what they used to say in the media. That's tenfold for the online algorithms. But they don't represent most of the world. And yes, there might be more people today who are critical of Israel than, let's say, 2 years ago, just because of the amount of media coverage. But more and more surveys over the past 2 years continuously indicate that even that rise doesn't tilt it so that the majority are anti-Israeli. And we really have to remember that silent majority. Hate speech is not about you personally. Again, I know it's hard to manage that statement. It may make sense up here, but then when you're online and somebody says something, you feel personally attacked. But think about it. They're not attacking you personally because they don't know you. They may not even know your name. They don't know what you look like. So just remember, it's not about you personally. It's not about your family. Yes, it can be frightening. It can trigger fear. And it can again cause the release of stress hormones, which is why we have to then proactively tell our own brain that it's misperceiving reality and remind ourselves of all the people we know who love us, of all the organizations, all of the protests around the world that you may have seen in DC, in Toronto, in London, hundreds of thousands of people protesting for Israel. You are not alone. Okay. And when people make hate speech, it's not just about you, it's about their own ideology. Sometimes it's just about their pain and their own ignorance. And remember, and I said this before, um, I won't repeat myself, but it's very, very important. Just, I don't put a sign on your computer. Uh, Put a calendar reminder that pops up on your phone 5 times a day that just says, you are not alone. You cannot believe how powerful that sentence is. And if you say that sentence to somebody around you who is feeling down, who is feeling burnt out, who is feeling helpless, just look at them. Tell them you're not alone and watch their response. It is overwhelming. Now, if you must respond, and as you may have seen, I've recommended a few ways, a few times not to respond. But if you must, first, pause. The best thing you can do to calm down your nervous system, especially your autonomous nervous system, is to count to 10. You must have heard this a million times as a kid. It actually works. So you're exposed to a stimulation, it aggravates your entire nervous system. You breathe, you listen to a song, you put a clock on your phone and you say, I'll respond in 10 minutes, and until then, I'm going to do something else that's fun. That will help you respond more effectively. If you do decide to respond, before you do so, ask yourself, what's my goal here? Is it going to be productive? And the goal cannot be, well, I'm speaking up for Israel. That's my goal. No, ask yourself, what are you trying to achieve now in this response? What do you think you're achieving? And this is not to say that you should never respond, right? But by setting a goal for yourself, you're helping yourself be wiser about, is this the right time? Is this the right place? Is this the right person? Is this the right platform? And it helps you prioritize your efforts so that when you do answer all these questions in a way that leads you to respond, at least you know you're optimizing the return on investment from your effort. And then proceed. Proceed only if you feel that you can respond calmly, respectfully, with purpose. So sometimes if you can't help it, just respond, but don't click send. Maybe then go to GPT, copy paste and say, hey, I just wrote this. Is there a way I can respond better, more calmly, more relaxed, more friendly, in a way that's more appealing to the silent majority? And that will make you more effective. It's not so much about how many posts you engage or how many minutes a day. It's about the actual impact you have when you do that. And when you do this wisely, you can get more done in 20 minutes a day of posting than you could otherwise in 3 hours. That would absolutely burn you out. And remember our collective strength. So remember, we've been here for over 3,000 years, and we're still here. And even though we're an incredibly small minority in the world's population, somehow we are still here and we are strong. Anti-Semitism has inflicted devastating wounds on us as a people, but it has ultimately failed. It's failed to defeat our foundational unity, our courage, our positive contribution to the world. That's very, very important to remember. Remind yourself of that. And remember that the same technology that our enemies are using against us, we can use for our own purpose. Like I said, creating groups, curating content, using GPT to respond more wisely, creating safe spaces for yourself and for your community, hunting in packs and feeding each other's feeds so that the algorithm gives them more reach. There's a lot that can be done here. But what I really want you to remember more than anything is that we are not alone. And social media can make you feel alone and it can make you feel outnumbered. And we may be outnumbered in pure numbers, but we have always been able to have a qualitative edge that made sure that we could thrive. And so I hope that you found this video helpful. If you have any other questions or you need more resources, do not hesitate to reach out and we will make sure those resources reach you. And I wish us all better days, more peaceful days. And I hope for you and for your family that you should stay safe and resilient, hopeful, and effectively active for your own community, for your own family, and for Israel.